All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today. I'm Kelly Coleffel with Hortonworks. I look after the oil and gas industry for Hortonworks, based in Houston. Really pleased to have an opportunity to have a chance to speak with Noble Energy today. Frank Besch and the Noble Energy team are a very unique company. They are also doing some very interesting things from an oil and gas perspective as it relates to advanced analytics. And Frank, welcome.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here. It feels like, I started my career after kind of the web started, so I missed that one, and this is a whole new paradigm shift, so it's really exciting to be a part of this. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks to Noble for giving me the opportunity to do this as well. Thank you. We'll try to be as awesome as possible.
And not run over too much with beverages afterwards. So, a little bit about your role at Noble and what you guys are doing. It's really an interesting company as well.
My career has primarily been in software and IT, and I'm based in Houston, so I had interacted and worked with a lot of oil and gas companies, Noble being one of them, and it stood out to me as being unique in the way that they partner, the way that they empathize, the way that they treat their, delivering energy is a partnership with communities. And I felt that Noble had, it was a small independent with a big heart. And the way that we approached partnerships, the quality of the leadership and the thinking was very intriguing. So I find myself now on my fourth year at Noble. I spent the first 3 years in various IT roles and recently pivoted from IT and worked for effectively one of the COOs, business innovation. So if you think about innovation as a process rather than an event, that's essentially the spirit of my new role at Noble Energy.
So you guys have been around a long time. You were a little bit of a sleepy oil and gas company for a number of years, and as of the last maybe 10, 20 have really started accelerating. You have some unique assets around the world. You're not just in North America. Can you talk a little bit about that to give the team some perspective?
You can see it on the slide that on the far left, the unique assets. The first two are onshore, what's called U.S. onshore. And then the third one is deep water, New Mexico. West Africa would be deep water as well in Equatorial Guinea. Israel and Cyprus would be deep water as well. Falkland Islands would be offshore, and then Nevada. So Falkland Islands, North Nevada, and Cyprus are not producing areas yet. So those are to be. And so one of the key things in the oil and gas business is, it has a lot of risk. Everybody knows that. The industry makes mistakes and catastrophic things happen. So risk aversion, risk management is something that the oil and gas industry endeavors to be perfect at. Noble Energy, after the terrible event in the Macondo event in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010 or a few years ago, after that, when the United States resumed operations drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, the first company that got was able to do that, they went through a rigorous process, was this company, Noble Energy. We're a $5 billion company, 2,500 employees. So to accomplish something like that was, quite special, and it defines and represents a new trajectory for the company. And I think that's a confluence of things: leadership, culture, the people, etc. But this whole risk management, something that's really important in oil and gas is to spread the risk optionality, because it's hard to find, and often we find, and then it's hard for that to be economic. So, the ability for this company is kind of go over the unique strategy, the culture, something I really like, and it leads to this big data. It opens up the opportunity, and that is the willingness to challenge the status quo. Big data, in an interesting way, is an opportunity to put your corporate ego, your company ego aside and be totally objective. So the ability to take new ideas and new possibilities, new ways, different thinking, different perspectives, is something that's very important to us. And so a technology like big data clearly is one of those. We recognized that we weren't doing it and others were, and seeing others do it in other industries. So we're like, well, how can we experiment, see what this is about, bring in different thinking? So that's something that's important to Noble, and this is an emerging outcome from that type of thinking.
Well, when you look at some of the challenges today, it's almost a perfect storm in oil and gas. You've got some of these, call them newer opportunities, newer assets that don't necessarily have a large historical base of data to operate from. You've got a tremendous amount of mergers and acquisitions, divestitures going on constantly. And on top of that, you've got a proliferation of data coming off of thousands and thousands of sensors at the well site all the way through the value chain. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you guys face as an upstream operator within the industry as it relates to data and advanced analytics?
I think everybody knows that the commodity price fell precipitously recently, and this is something that has happened to the industry. I believe it's 7 to 9 times since '72. So leadership, experienced leaders, and Noble has, they understand how to do these. But when that happens, the fundamental cost structure of the industry changes. So immediately you have companies that their cost of capital or their debt is prohibitive, and so it causes consolidation. So efficient when it goes up, it's about growth and all that. But when it falls in half, I mean, think about working in an industry where the cost structure, or the revenue just got cut in half, I should say. So now the industry is effectively, the cost of the industry was tuned to a certain price, and that's, we define a range. I mean, the analysts and the companies, and everyone does their best to predict. No one predicted it would go to 50, right? But being able to respond in the best way possible to the uncertainty, and controlling the cost of your product, we have uncertainty there. So that presents an ongoing challenge, and occasionally it becomes a survival challenge for some when your revenue gets cut in half. So the efficiency, our ability to deliver profitably when the revenue is cut in half is it's all about making the best decisions. It's about having the best analysis, really understanding what you have, what you don't have, what can take place, what the risks are. The tolerance for error just narrows when the price goes, like that.
Well, even though the price got cut in half, probably the data volumes did not. So that problem persisted all the way through this decline that we're in right now. But what are you guys doing about that? These volumes are continuing to grow.
It feels like data growth is impervious to the recession proof, I guess.
Yeah. Exactly.
our our industrial network infrastructure is the network is larger than our corporate network, just in the DJ Basin, just that one. So we have that's just the networking, and in that basin we have close to 8,000 wells. So this is a tremendous amount of industrial equipment and power, distribution, and these are high pressure, and what we deal with is flammable, explosive. So the risk is just amazing, and the complexities in the asset. It's not just a single asset, a well or a collection of wells. It's an entire basin. It's an ecosystem, and our ability to understand that and predict that and optimize and craft our infrastructure, our industrial infrastructure around that is important, and it's getting harder to do. And so there is the emergence of sensors and equipment that is networked and connected, and so that's the amount of the ratio of smart equipment is increasing, and the data volumes can be overwhelming.
So my guess is you talked about the sensors, a lot of this machine data coming off of tons of capital equipment sitting out in the field. My guess is you've also got, though, maybe some unstructured information, comments, yes, different feedback that's coming in from your operator side, as well as maybe other types of data too. Tons of structured data sets out there that are a challenge to get combined up and make decisions off of.
We certainly have the typical ERP data, the financial data, supply chain data, but we have lots of operational systems that are, if you're not an oil and gas person, or familiar with the industry, you may not hear all kinds of niche operational applications, and mostly that feed engineers and scientists and so forth. And the data's, like anything, it's been siloed, but we also have unstructured information. For example, in safety, we obviously capture any incidents that have happened. We also capture near miss, what we call near misses, which I've heard characterized as an incident with luck. And then we also are beginning to characterize observations. So these are you can clearly see these are leading indicators, but some of that information that's captured is text. It's unstructured. So it doesn't to have team, a bunch of people reading and that's it. Just going through all that data, it's not scalable. Can't do it fast enough. Can't respond. And when you're talking about safety, you need to be able to respond immediately and prevent. So that's a source of unstructured information. You mentioned the machine data, temperatures and pressures and porosity and, salinity. There's all kinds of, this is we're trying to understand the physics of the underground and predict the physics of underground. So there's lots of measures and scientific numbers, tags, whatever you want to call them. So you've got traditional ERP type, transactional, supply chain, et cetera. We have that. Then you have this operational data that's structured but unique to the industry. And again, it has a lot of scientific measures, and often they have unstructured data. And then we have other applications that, as I mentioned, capture unstructured data. So, being able to consume it all, much less synergize it, which is the big data opportunity, is to, these different types of information that haven't been combined before. You see new insights and new predictions, et cetera. So there's so much complexity, but so much opportunity.
So set against those challenges, Frank, what type of approach did you guys take? We have a lot, you've obviously heard here at the conference, there's a lot of folks that start out with a net new analytics application or two, building towards an enterprise data lake, pick something out of high value.
Yes.
Some people start enterprise data lake. What approach did Noble take? Why? What were some of the dimensions that you guys looked at as you were making this decision? And tell us a little bit about the journey with Hadoop today. I know you're on the second year of your program?
Just about. June will be a year, yeah. So initially it was, okay, we set the expectation that this is an experiment. We're gonna, we're comfortable experimenting, so let's test it. We felt it was important, since this is the dawn of a new paradigm in IT. We wanted to be, open source core really appealed to us for optionality. Didn't want to get locked in. So we said we want to be open, and that's why we chose Hortonworks, because we wanted a pure open core foundation. And then when it came to use cases, we wanted to, we looked around the business and looked for what are the imperatives, what are the problems and opportunities that are absolutely right in the, on the poster in the wall. There's some companies put annual goals on the wall or whatever. So we made sure that they were aligned. We made sure that we weren't locked in. We started with the cloud so we could do it quickly and cheaply. And I went and surveyed the business, and I found someone who, because I had already established a partnership. I think that's number one. You got to go find someone who has done this before, knows how to do it. I think that makes it a little more efficient. And then you have to find what's the, it's not just IT and a partner. What's the business problem, and who are the business people, because eventually this is going to affect their workflows and so forth. So, I was, or we were able to find someone in the business that happened to have a strong math background, was getting a master's in operational research, so he was kind of dabbling in this area. So we approached him, and he was a classic, part computer scientist and part researcher, mathematician. So it was like, wow, this guy, So anyway, so we partnered with him, and we had a very narrow use case, and were just really focused on that. Another use case came up, and we were looking, that was just pure data science, like coding Python. I mean, no visualization, or no data science tool. We just used, the basic libraries and so forth. And we had another use case pop up in a vendor that was a potential. And so there was a thinking of, well, let's do that in the same location. And I think we made a good decision saying, no, we're not going to saddle this right here with another use case, because we haven't proved anything, or at least proved to ourselves that we can do this and drive it all the way to the value. So I would caution to not stack use cases on the same people, etc. The open core approach, I think starting with the cloud is excellent. You can do it quickly. What else? The executive discussions. These are important too. There's a balance between giving the energy and the hype and the selling, and being realistic that, hey, this could fail, right? Because this is scientific method kind of approach, and that's what data mining and data and analytics, is about. So getting them to understand that, hey, we're going to dabble in this, and the first use case may not be the right one. We may not have the data, etc. So just tempering it a little bit, and then saying, here's the potential. And coupling that as they're kind of dichotomy. You kind of hedge your bet a little bit. So you have to really blow their mind with the opportunity, but then you have to say, hey, this is about a journey of learning and experimenting, etc.
So I hear you saying, maybe a good way of putting it, pick out an executive wow factor type application that's going to get the attention of the C-suite if possible. Whoever's sponsoring you on the business side.
Yeah, you got to be able to point to the poster. Yeah. See that bullet right there? This will materially improve that, affect that, help that.
Right. So just from an infrastructure standpoint, I think it'd be interesting to understand. You said you started in the cloud. Where have things gone since then? Still leveraging the cloud?
Yes. seemed right to us that we, started in the cloud, and then when we wanted to be, operationalize it, we said, let's do it on-prem, but let's leave the cloud environment for test, dev, QA, data science, playground, et cetera. So that's kind of, as it stands right now, that's the architecture we have, and we like it so far.
And you also alluded to a secondary application that you guys have started down the path on, a separate program. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, that second one actually, that was one, I don't know if you want to call it a failure, but we walked down that path and it turned out we didn't have the data and the value wasn't going to be there or whatever, so we abandoned that. So then the use case that you're mentioning is in the security space, actually, in the threat area. And I'm thinking there might be a lot of IT people in here that are familiar, what SIM is to server logs or whatever. This is almost that at a macro level where, it's not server logs that you're correlating, it's news feeds, social media feeds, various, oil and gas specific feeds to understand, because we're a global company and and I mentioned it's a partnership with the community. So we have to really understand those communities and what they want and the risks that they have, et cetera. So being able to understand, the type and the location and the interaction that we're supposed to have, understanding that threat, if it makes sense or if it doesn't.
Sounds like that's probably an industry-wide
definitely.
initiative that would be very beneficial to look at from an analytics standpoint. I can't imagine the amount of data feeds that you have to take in to be able to do that type of assessment.
Yeah, I think it's like 15 data sources. It is a lot of information, and again, it's mostly unstructured. It's interesting because I lost my train of thought, so ask another, sorry.
So I like this approach, and I think some of the folks in the keynotes this morning talked about this, where it wasn't just relying on a single application. It sounds like you took an approach where you said, okay, well, let's try multiple things. We know that some things aren't going to exactly hit the mark, and we may have a home run on our hands with others. So let's keep it low cost, let's spread our risk out, let's do things that are high impact for the business that are going to get that wow factor, and then move on to the next.
Yeah, I think it's important to follow all the way through, and the balance of setting expectations with the executives. The other thing is that there was it was interesting, the resistance. This will expose new ways to do things. This will expose insights or things that we didn't know, even though the industry, groups of people have been doing it for a very long time. It still has the potential to uncover insights and predictions and so forth that didn't exist before. So this kind of upsets the apple cart a little bit. So I found the best way to get around that is to make sure that you communicate to the business people that, hey, you own the data. The insights and predictions that come out of this are yours. You have it's your responsibility to assess that information, whether it's good or not, whether you believe it or not. But you want to hold them accountable to commit to that data, the insight and the predictions that come out of that. You own that, follow that through, make sure that it's either accurate or not. So you have to hold them to the fire, but you have to make sure that you empower them and take away this notion that the computers are taking over, the rise of the machines or whatever. So I think that's critical to make sure that it create a real partnership. And it's like, hey, we're just bringing tools and data to you, and you're the expert. You're the geophysicist. You're the petroleum engineer, et cetera, whatever the discipline is, to make sure that they know you set the expectation. Hey, I might be delivering the technology and infrastructure and even maybe the idea, but you own this. You are empowered, and that they receive it better that way.
Well, you guys are obviously a well-established company. You've got a number of very critical pieces of infrastructure within not only the oil field side, but within the data center as well. Traditional architectures, newer architectures like Hadoop. Where do you see the interplay between some of the things that you're doing and have done traditionally and how do those things fit together for Noble Energy?
Mostly the value and the space that this opens up is not a space that traditional systems occupy, generally, in my opinion. There's definitely some overlap. And I think mostly I think it's complementary. They're complementary. However, we are looking at a situation where a data warehouse, data mart might be kind of the right thing. We have an enterprise data warehouse, but not all the subjects and not all not everything's represented. It's not 100%. But it's a good data warehouse, has lots of good subject areas, et cetera. But subject areas that it doesn't have, mostly operational in nature, because data warehouses usually grow out of ERPs and CRMs, et cetera. We don't have CRM because we sell to the commodity market. We don't have any gas stations or anything like that. So we're pure upstream in the oil and gas space, exploration, development, and production. So there's a situation, we're toying with the idea of a solution that's Hadoop based that effectively would be, satisfy what a data mart would. So I think it's possible. I struggle with the idea of throwing away your data warehouse and for this. I think it's complementary, but you never know.
So can you share with us a little bit, maybe just a little glimpse into some of the results that you guys have had initially, 1 year in, and then maybe some of the next steps? You guys, I'm sure, have gotten some good feedback internally about additional areas that you can move into with the program, and let us know where you're going there.
Yeah, the first use case was, we identified one of our areas, and it was about asset utilization, and specifically the wells. These are producing wells, and I mentioned that they're all interconnect system, and amazing number of components, et cetera. So there's some failure in the entire system somewhere. So that's money being lost and costs being incurred. So being able to predict the downtime with certainty, we're able to in this field. Right now it's a batch. Feed the model. It's not real time yet, but it will be one day. And being able to with I think it was 4 to 5 times. We could identify the ones that were going down and very, very high fit and high probability. So very accurate, surprisingly accurate. So we're able to, and some wells produce lots and some do not. And the downtime some causes of downtime are expensive to fix, remediate, and some are not. So you have to be able to combine the existing data, but we're able to narrow into, okay, these are truly this is the asset utilization that we can preserve. Some it doesn't make sense. You don't want to, if a server wasn't doing anything and it went down, who cares, So it's not as simple as it's going up or down and okay, focus on the up. There's a lot of business and economics that goes into that,
So you've got, you realize some operational value. It sounds like you're really starting to approach data as a strategic asset and on a path to leveraging that across the business. You have a lot of areas, obviously, that if you look at maybe the 3 main groups, you do a lot of G&G work, you do drilling and production, a few other things, but areas that you see for the program for the rest of 2015 into 16 that you say, hey, there's at least 3 or 4 more high value areas here that we can pick out and start addressing?
The area that I'm most excited about is safety and environment, and the ability to use this technology to eliminate all harm to people and environment. That's the possibility, that's the aspiration, the breakthrough goal. That's what excites me most, because there's still 1.3 billion people on Earth that don't have energy. And we've done some amazing things as a human race, but we still can't, over 1 billion people don't have water and over 1 billion people don't have electricity. So electricity power is very correlated with standard of living and health and mortality rates, et cetera. So our purpose of energizing the world, bringing the energy and bettering their lives, that means something. And to do it in a perfectly harmless way is I think exciting. Oil and gas is sometimes doesn't have the best brand, and so big data might be able to help us be even better, more precise, more accurate, and safer, and so forth. Because, as I mentioned, it's a partnership with the community. So if we go to a place like we've explored, we explored somewhere and it wasn't going to be economic, and so we had to back out. But there's a very thoughtful procedure or goal for us to, when we leave, even though we weren't successful at finding energy for them, to leave that place better than we found it, the community, and somehow have a positive impact. So whether we're successful or not, but our ability to have a smart infrastructure and that is impeccably reliable it means we can deliver energy for more people, and we do it without making mistakes.
It was great to get a glimpse into what you guys are doing at Noble Energy. Are you up for a few questions?
Oh, absolutely. We've got 6 minutes.
If there are questions, would you guys mind stepping up to one of the 2 mics here so that we can hear, everyone can hear?
Sure. I assume one of your biggest cost drivers is leasing and then utility at those sites that you're going to do exploration at. Have you been able to do anything with have you had any success using operationally an insight around leasing to be able to reduce your upfront cost? And also, is your leasing rates, are they variable based on the predicted market rate or production rate?
The second question, I don't know. The first one, we've thought about it, but we have not done it. We have no big data in place to optimize that.
So you guys are still just making decisions on whatever market prices dictate?
You talking about on leases?
Yeah.
I'm not exactly familiar with how they're doing. I don't know.
Yeah. Sure.
But I know they're not using big data yet.
Hi, this is
Hello.
Roger Hill. I had 2 questions actually
Yes.
for you. Is your company using IoT, like sensor data, around any of your machinery to do predictive analytics around like equipment failures yet, or?
Yes, but not at the equipment level. We're doing it at the well level.
Okay.
Okay, so, but we're predicting downtime in the cause. So sometimes that cause is a component, right?
Okay.
But it's again, the maturity of the IoT is low and emerging. So yes, we definitely have sensors. Oil and gas has had lots of sensors for a while, but again, I mentioned things like pressure and temperature. There's a bunch of basic measures that, yes, there's equipment that's producing that, absolutely. Okay. And using that to predict, this is what failure looks like. Okay, what's the behavior What does that pattern look like before it occurs? And that pattern is a function of temperature and pressure and casing and temperature outside. Weather data comes in when it gets cold, and then the variable goes, the attribute goes out when it's not, because freezing, causes downtime. So, yes. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and that explanation actually kind of leads into my second question. Are you guys
Your second question?
Yeah, my second question, right, second question. Are you using any type of public available data feeds? Like for instance, how does the weather affect your business? So
Yes, weather.
okay, so are you doing anything like that with any public?
Weather
data
is
feeds?
one of the features, it comes into, and absolutely that attribute becomes a driver when it's cold. We operate in some cold areas. So yes, the weather is one of those data, is the external data. The other one is our midstream partner. As I mentioned, we find, develop, and produce, and then we deliver it to what's called midstream in oil and gas, and that's pipelines and transport. So we're also getting some SCADA data from our midstream partner, because one of the things that can, if you're relying, it's like you've got the car and the highway has traffic. The traffic can affect the speed of your car, even though your car can go 150 miles per hour. If there's traffic, it can't. So that's another piece of external sensor data that we're getting.
Thank you.
The question.
You mentioned you were using social network data feeds coming in.
This is a project's underway. It's not complete, but yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. My question was, how are you looking to use those, and what business value is that driving?
Okay, yeah, so we don't have, how do I say this? Okay, we go to places that we've never been before, and it's a partnership with the community. It's a partnership with the community, and to understand that some places are safer than others, and the social, that can be an indicator. I don't know what specific social media feeds they're looking at or whatnot. That's the physical security group, and I don't know the detail, but it has to do with, some places have unrest and some places don't. If we have folks that are traveling to that country and it happens to be, possible day that stuff's going to happen, we produce in Israel, so they're under attack sometimes, or there's war stuff that goes on. So understanding when those bad days, bad events, does that make sense?
I think so.
So sometimes the social media, those conversations can be indicative of a certain event.
So it's more around physical security than a relationship with the community or anything like that?
That's right, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Threat assessment, yeah.
Another question?
Yes. While setting up your Hadoop cluster and pulling data into it and ingesting it, what kinds of problems did you face with entitlements, especially, or data accessibility within the organization? So would you be running into problems with giving access to producing wells to everybody in the company? Would you have to silo data? How did you actually do that in the context of a Hadoop cluster? Did you run into any problems at all?
The only challenges we ran, I believe, the main challenges that we ran into were getting the data from the SCADA historian infrastructure, which was not designed to have a big data consumer. So that was a bottleneck, and is something that we still have to, typically that SCADA goes into a historian and it just sits there, and a few people interact with it. So now in a big data environment, you have, theoretically, you have a computational cluster going after that which is, so that infrastructure was not sized for a big data consumer. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I was thinking of the question was more along the lines of data security. You mentioned that you had moved some of this data when you're testing the system out into the cloud. I don't know which cloud you use, but it was definitely outside your Azure. Okay, so it was definitely outside your firewall. So what kinds of concerns did management raise when you moved this kind of data outside? Was it all fake data scrubbed, or was it real data? And going forward, what kinds of problems do you face in that regard? That was the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So far, no big deal because we're really small. So we just have a handful of people accessing this data, and then the data is in the Hadoop, and then the output is just in a table and then visualized with Spotfire. So really small community. So we haven't tackled the full governance. That's a part of this this other use case that we're working on is lots of governance around that. But the initial one, not so much, because again, such a small user base, and we were already comfortable with Azure. We had already done the due diligence and had a partnership with Microsoft in place, and had already acquired, with an agreement that we were comfortable with the Azure. So we had a little pile of Azure in our pocket, and so we used that for the experiment, and then we decided, it was a good experience. We can be successful test dev QA and development environment for Azure. So, we were already comfortable with Azure, so that didn't come up.
Beautiful. Perfect. Thank you.
So we're a little bit over time. I know there's another question. We'll stay up here for you guys. If you could, yeah, beer as well.
Beer.
Just join me in thanking Frank for participating in Hadoop Summit. Thank you, Frank.